All right, so what we're going to do here is we are going to walk through a thought primer so that you can get a sense of what your work is going to look like on a week-to-week basis and how to complete it successfully. So to get us started, we'll click here on the modules link here in Canvas, and that's going to take us to the all-important modules page. We can do virtually everything we need to do with the exception of reading out of our course texts from this modules page. What you're going to notice is that each week, each Monday morning, a new module will post at the top of the modules page. The module that appears at the top of the modules page is our current work. So you can always figure out what it is you need to do on a week-to-week basis by just looking at the top of the modules page. All right, so here you are in the course overview module, and you'll notice that right below that is week number 1, getting oriented to ethics. And when we open up that module, we're going to see a couple of things. We're going to see a link to the Thought Primer number 1 assignment page, and we're going to see links to the week's discussion threads that will be on the discussion board, and I'll come back to that here in a moment. So first, we're going to go into Thought Primer number 1 sign-up page, and we're going to see that like almost every other Thought Primer you're going to complete this semester, it begins with some questions that you're going to respond to. And as the instructions say, you're looking to write between 1 and 2 pages, typed, double-spaced, in response to these questions. Now, just to be clear, you don't need to write 1 to 2 pages in response to each of the questions. You want your total responses to all of the questions to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 2 pages. If you want to write more than that, that's fine. If you find yourself writing less than a page, you're going to get a nastygram from me, because the kinds of questions that we're typically dealing with are not questions that can be answered in less than a page very thoughtfully or meaningfully. So you're always shooting for at least that full typed double-spaced page. Now, sometimes you're going to encounter questions in your thought primers that you don't know exactly how to respond to. You might feel you might feel conflicted. On the one hand, I think this is the case, but on the other hand, I can make a compelling argument for this one, and I can't figure out which of these two positions I should be embracing, and I can't figure it out because. That's a perfectly legitimate way to respond to a thought primer question if you don't have a firm position, right? That can be a good opportunity for you to be clarifying for yourself what it is that you feel conflicted about and why you're having difficulty resolving that tension. All right, so you're going to write your responses to these questions. Your thinking will be primed for this week's video lectures, which appear in part 2. And you can watch all of these video lectures right here from the Thought Primer assignment page by simply clicking this red arrow right in the middle of the image. Alrighty, so our goal in this video, and here we are. So you can watch your series of video lectures, take notes of anything that you find interesting or confusing so that you can then later on post that to the discussion board. As you're watching your video lectures, it's a really smart strategy to have the quiz that is associated with your video lectures open in a separate window. So I'm always going to put the quiz that's associated with video lectures above those video lectures. Okay, so here's quiz number 1. If you have that quiz open in a separate window as you watch your video lectures, you can be answering the questions in the quiz as I touch on those questions in the video lectures. Okay, easy way to get 100% on your quizzes. All right, so we watch our 5 video lectures here. I always try to keep them between 5 and 8 minutes because I know folks really like to have their lectures in those kind of digestible chunks. And if I'm going on and on and on for 55 minutes at a time, that can get a little tedious. All right, so we watch our 5 video lectures here, and then we come down here to part 3. And typically, what we would have following the video lectures are some readings to do, okay? Some assigned reading out of our course text or reading from a document that I've linked here, okay? But Thought Primer number 1 is an exception. There is no reading to do here. Whenever there is a reading assignment associated with the Thought Primer, there's also going to be a quiz associated with that reading. And so again, it's a really smart strategy to have that quiz open in Canvas as you're doing your reading so that you can be answering the questions as you encounter that material in your reading. Now here what we see is a reminder, if you didn't complete that quiz number 1, you want to go back and do it. Hopefully you did it as you were watching your video lectures. And now you're ready to submit your responses to those opening questions in the Thought Primer by clicking the Start Assignment button at the top of the page. And you're going to see that there's a couple of different ways for you to submit your responses. One is you could upload a file. You can upload a Word file or a PDF file. The thing you don't want to do is send me a Google Docs link. That can create all kinds of problems. And you don't want to upload a Pages file. My computer does not get along with Pages files for some reason. So you can upload a file, PDF, Microsoft Word, any of those standard word processing programs, or if that doesn't work for you, you can click this text entry tab and you can copy and paste your work into this and submit it that way. Okay. Now, once you've done that, you've just earned half credit for this thought primer. Okay. Every thought primer is worth 2 points, and you get 1 point for submitting your responses to the opening questions for the thought primer. You get the other point for the thought primer by heading over to the Canvas discussion board and participating in the discussions that are pinned for that week. So at the top of the page are going to be the active threads that are associated with this week's thought primer. And to get the other point, that second point for your thought primer assignment, you're going to want to be participating in the discussion on the discussion board. Now, there's a couple of different ways, or a few different ways you can do that. I'm always going to have questions posted in the pinned section that are related to the thought primer, and you are free to participate by responding to those questions that I've posed. You could, though, look at a response from another student and say, that sparks an idea in mind. I want to get some clarity on this. Or I have a different way of thinking about this. And you could simply respond to something one of your classmates has posed. Or you could start your own discussion thread by clicking Add Discussion, and then I'll pin that discussion for you, and it'll appear up here in the active discussion threads, okay? So you get 1 point for your thought primer by submitting your responses to the questions, and you get the other point for your thought primer by participating in the discussions that are pinned for that week. Now, here's the important thing to remember. Make sure you participate in the pinned discussions before they become unpinned. Okay, so on Monday morning each week, I'm going to take down the previous week's discussion threads, and you will no longer be able to get into them to write responses, and you will have lost your opportunity to get that point for your thought primer. Right? That's half credit for your thought primer. So you want to make sure that you are jumping into the discussion threads before Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Now, again, you can get extra credit on your thought primers by submitting your responses to the questions in the thought primer and participating in the discussion by Thursdays at 11:59 p.m. Okay, so if you can do both of those things by Thursday at 11:59 p.m., your thought primer will not just get 2 points, it'll get 2.5 points, and those half points will really add up. All right, so that's what your work is going to look like on a week-to-week basis.